Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Pedro from Typeform. I run growth. I understand this is the last session of the whole event in this stage, so no pressure. So I figured I could do, make it a little bit lighter. And I figured I could just share, the three things that I figure are the most important and that have been the most important for us in terms of learnings for growth. So these are the things that I would, if I were to start a company tomorrow, that I would take with me for sure. Before that, what is, has anyone here not heard about Typeform? Cool, one person. So for you, dear gentlemen, Typeform is about building forms that get you more and better data through a conversational interface. So if you look out there, and traditionally like paper forms, they feel like commands. They feel like first name, last name, age, sex. And we as an industry, we translated that exactly as it is to the web. And so our founders, and they had a joint, two design agencies working in a co-working space, and they had this client that asked them, hey, it was a toilet company, by the way. They had this really upscale exhibition, and they wanted to display on big iMacs a lead gen form so people could leave their email. And so they said, oh, great, let's just pop into Google, lead gen form, use that, and build a customer. But that didn't work. The forms out there are really, really suck. So they came up with Typeform, a much easier way to get data, feels much more human. Now, you can use the point-and-click interface to build forms and get data, but last week, we just launched a new set of APIs that you can use today to get those forms built dynamically just by making a few API calls and get the data back. We haven't changed our pricing for it. It's exactly the same base pricing for Typeform, and that means you get unlimited usage no matter how much data you get. So enjoy it, and enjoy it while it lasts. So a few stats on that, on Typeform. So we're from Barcelona, Spain. Can't complain. We have 160 employees from over 40 countries. We've raised over 50 million in funding. We launched 3.5 years ago. We have 31K paying customers that, combined with our free user base, they reach 30 million people every month that visit and our Typeforms. Cool. So the first note that I wanted to share is before thinking about growth, you need to think about product. And product really always comes first. We only started the growth team at Typeform when we were about 20, 30 people. And this I can't really stress enough. The first thing you want to look at is whether people talk about you. And people talk about stuff they like. And so if you're launching and you have a small user base, and if they're not really talking about you, that's probably a bad sign. So we focus heavily on NPS to track this. And our VP of customer success is back there, and he could tell you a lot about NPS. But it has really helped us transform and make our best users, turn them into brand advocates, and also figure out what problems we have in the product to reduce churn. Another thing is that if you already have some traction, you want to look at your retention curve. And this was also a big wow moment for us, was when we plotted this. So this is the percentage of users that paid for the first time and continue paying month after month. And the good thing about it is that the curve flattens out, which means that there's a subset of the market that we attract and they stay with us indefinitely. In other words, we don't have a leaky bucket, which means we can grow the product and because we know some user will stick with us forever. A lot of people say this is a good sign of product market fit. A good analogy that Andrew Chen, he heads up Uber, growth at Uber, he says that growth is like a magnifying glass. So if you have a good product, it's like a tiny diamond, and if you put a magnifying glass on top of it, you get a bigger, shiny diamond. But if your product is a piece of crap, you really don't want to put a magnifying glass on top of it. So growth really accelerates what's already existing, what's already working, sorry. Product cares about building that core value and solving that customer pain. Growth cares about getting people to experience that value, getting more people to experience that value, and as fast as possible and as often as possible. So we don't build new features. We do things that accelerate that growth process. So virality, onboarding, inbound integrations, and pricing. So I'm here to talk about growth, but if there's a few things that I can tell you about that I've observed at Typeform when it comes to building a product, it's these. The first one is that we strive to make things a little bit more human. Simple, friendly, useful, and remarkable. These are the guiding principles of our product decisions. Second is that we obsess over details. So we really go the extra mile to make sure we're insanely proud of whatever we put out there. And this makes us slow. It does make us slow. We at Typeform, we're much slower at shipping value than other companies out there. However, when we do it, it's usually great products, and that we're really, really proud of. Final thing is that we focus on customer problems, and this is something that we keep. We tend to think about solutions and, what if we did this and this and this? And like Milos, our head of product, he is the first one to say, hey, that's a solution. What's the problem we're trying to solve? What this allows us is that it helps us set us free from what's being done out there. What's the standard? So we ask why a lot of times, and we break things down to their root, and we often end up with solutions that are radically different of what's being made out there. Cool. So, assuming you have a good product that people love, that solves a real problem in a big market, then it's time to make it grow. And which leads me to the second big note of today, which is that sustainable growth comes from loops, not hacks and tricks. And the problem is that we love these things. We love reading about, changing button colors and hacks and how it will bring 10x growth. But that doesn't work that way. We need to take a step back and think, how does this tactic fit into my growth model? Does it make sense for me or not? And we did try a lot of stuff. We were victims of this thinking. So when I started at Typeform, we were 10 people. And we did all sorts of things, from holding social media contests and paying a 2-week trip to Machu Picchu for the winner when we didn't have any funding. We started a Pinterest account for some reason. Email newsletters, you name it. We tried a lot of things, really. And also, we set expectations too high. So at one point, we started this game because we wanted people to, in Typeform internally, to get excited about our work. And this was when we started A/B testing and trying those hacks that you read about online. So we have this internal tool in Typeform called Bonusly. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Bonusly, but it's an employee recognition tool. And what it does is it allows you to create internally a virtual currency, and then you give a monthly allowance to all of your employees. And then when you're working on something and you want to show your appreciation to a teammate, you give them a bunch of type coins. It's what we call them. And then at the end of the month, You can exchange the type coins you were given for Amazon gift cards, and donate to charity, and you exchange it for cash, and lots of things. So we created this profile called Mad Gambler. And the Mad Gambler was a profile we created, and before each test, we would ask people, hey, this is the test we're going to do, this is the hypothesis, this is the baseline data, these are the mock-ups, this is why we believe it will increase conversions. And we asked, hey, do you want to bet some type coins? So, and so what happened was that people really got really excited about it, and they started actually saving their type coins and not giving to their teammates and to show their appreciation, so they could invest and bet on Mad Gambler. And this, I had an alternative title for this slide, which was How to Shoot Yourself in the Foot, because it created expectations that were really, really high. And growth is about failing a lot as well, and we didn't set those expectations. So at some point, we got a lot of inconclusives in a row. And getting an inconclusive really sucks because you don't learn anything. I'd rather have a loser because you learned something than an inconclusive, because you go like, should we keep this? Like, it didn't lose, and we like the design. And that really sucked. And so people started asking a lot of questions internally. Hey, why do we have a growth team? Why do we spend so much time testing minor things that are just design, and we just keep getting inconclusives? This was an Ask Me Anything doc that our founders run from time to time. So I wished we had understood this first, before we started. So I'm here to tell you what's a growth loop. So a growth loop is a system of inputs and outputs that repeats itself indefinitely. And you want to answer this ultimate question, which is, how does a cohort of new users ultimately generate another cohort of new users? And there's a few examples out there. If you think of marketplaces like Airbnb and Uber, this is where more demand attracts more suppliers drives competition up, quality goes up, prices go down, which in turn attracts more demand, and so on and so forth. So if you think of Uber, more riders attracts more drivers, drivers, waiting times go down, prices go down, quality goes up, which in turn attracts more riders, and so on and so forth. It's really hard to start because you have this chicken and egg problem in the beginning. And that's why these on-demand delivery services need so much cash to start, because there's a constrained side of the market that they need to incentivize to get the flywheel going. But once it does, you really get hockey stick growth, and the biggest companies in the world are marketplaces. Then there's the second loop, which is SEO through user-generated content. This is Quora and YouTube. This is where new users find content. A percentage of those users sign up. They create more content. That content gets indexed by Google, which in turn is found by more people. A percentage of those people convert, sign up, publish more content, so on and so forth. It's really time-consuming. You rely on the platform you're growing on top of. And you need to really incentivize people to publish high-quality content. If you think of Yahoo Answers, that's why they ultimately failed, because the content wasn't good enough. Paid acquisition, this is basically reinvesting the money you get from new customers into more ads to get more customers. It also applies to folks that have a sales team. You have a loop there as well, where more customers, they bring in more revenue that you can use to grow your sales team. And you can play that with quotas and so on and so forth. And finally, there's a fourth category, which are viral products. So social media networks first, then came messaging apps, and where new users, they make us, a bunch of invites, their friends sign up, those friends invite more people, and so on and so forth. Now, Typeform's growth loop is viral. We're not a social media network, we're not a messaging app, but we have a product that people use because they want to get data from their audience. So they will create a Typeform and share with their audience. So they're literally exposing our brand to more people. And when we realized this, it was when we started the growth team and having engineers work on virality. And our growth loop really quickly goes like this. So we get 100 signups, 80% of them create a Typeform, 80% of them save at least one question, 30% share at that Typeform. They get on average 600 visits. Then 1.9 of those visits, 1.9%, they click on our branding, 0.5 go to Google. They don't click, but they go to Google and search for us. We get about 300 visits to our website, and we get a 20% conversion to sign up. And we have this in more detail, all the steps, and you should do that as well. But this is just a simplified version. So we have a K factor, which we call a viral coefficient of 0.5. And that means that for every 2 signups we get, they generate another signup. And this is great. For one, it makes all of our one-off channels, like linear channels, like sponsoring an event or doing a PR release, much more effective, because I know if I get 100 signups from that channel, they'll generate 50. Those 50 will generate 25, and I'll end up with 200 signups, effectively doubling my ROI. The second biggest benefit is that A/B testing wins are amplified. Because if you think about it, if you get, for example, a 10% win in conversion to sign-up, you're not only exposing that improvement to the initial cohort of users, but you're also exposing it to the users that they will refer. So growth becomes slowly more exponential. And so you can prioritize tests that hit one of the critical steps in your loop. And indeed, when we started doing this, we got some big, big wins. The biggest one was when we added the default branded thank you screen at the end of all Typeforms, saying, hey, thanks for completing this Typeform, now go create your own. Cool, so growth, user base, acquisition, that's great, but you want to grow a business as well. And how do you grow a subscription business? Well, you can focus on getting more customers. Growth models are important for this. But you can also focus on getting bigger customers. And you can focus on getting customers that stick with you for longer and pay you more over time. So I want to talk about, how you translate those 3 big avenues into SaaS metrics. And we've been organizing our teams according to these metrics for a long time. Now we figured the acquisition part, but the monetization part came a little bit later. And I want to talk about that part because it leads me to the third note that I wanted to share today, which is pricing is by far the biggest business growth lever you can have. And I put up a funny picture of Pablo Escobar up there because it's been also a controversial topic in Typeform. Like a really, really hot topic. And the first reason is because we're a bunch of product-focused people, and we're crafters at heart, and we like to build stuff and see what we build used by as many people as possible. And when we talk about pricing, we're effectively talking about raising a wall between what we build and customers and people out there. So, developers, if for them, the world would be free and open source, right? So the second biggest reason why this has been a hot topic for us, it's because I think we have a natural tendency to undervalue what we build. And so we underprice ourselves. I'll never forget an interview I read to a guy that is an employee at Pixar. And they were doing this tour around the building, and at some point, the interviewer and the employee, they stop at this glass case full of Oscars. You know, Pixar is a great company. They put out the best movies in the industry. And this is a picture of it. You can't really see, but trust me, it is. And the interviewer asks, "Hey, what's your favorite film?" And the Pixar guy goes, and the interviewer asks, why the sigh? And the Pixar employee, I forget his name, he says, "Well, that's a really tough question because I love them all, but at the same time, and especially on those that I've worked on the most, when I watch them, I always see the flaws and the shortcuts that we took and the things that we didn't do because we wanted to do, but we didn't because we didn't want to risk the schedule. And so it's really painful. And so it's only until I talk with my friends and my family and I see their faces that I go, okay, it's not as bad as I think." And I think, and I've seen this at Typeform, we think the same thing. We think our product could always be better if only it had that feature and this feature, and it was like this. So to break this, we started talking with other companies that we admire. I'll also never forget a call that I had with the director of growth at Intercom, Ben, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, this year we tested pricing 9 times," and that was like amazing for us. That was crazy. Like, how can you do that? We had a million questions, and there's other companies that we talk with and that we looked at. Mailchimp has a lot of pricing data, and the changes in the business model. And so we did it as well. We embraced pricing, and the first thing that we did was actually we just raised our prices by 40% from one day to the other, and conversions didn't drop. Second thing we did was we launched a new feature, a new plan with just one feature that was double the price, and today it accounts for 30% of our revenue. And then we started moving features, high-value features, to that new plan, and we saw that conversions also weren't affected. And I would have other examples that I can tell you about later. But this is it. Product always comes first. Please don't grow shitty products. Focus on sustainable growth, not hacks, and embrace pricing. So, thank you. So we have a few questions here. First one is interesting job title. Thanks. What is product growth? Growing sales or building out the product? Or so it goes back to what I said about distinguishing between core products and growth. At Typeform, it's been a product function. So product cares about user value, creating new value. We focus on getting people to that value. So we do things like onboarding and pricing and inbound integrations. We do overlap a little bit and we butt heads a lot. But that's when you start a growth team, you need to expect this conflict will happen. And you need to communicate very well the purpose of the team and celebrate wins when they happen, big time, so you get buy-in. And you need support from the founders. Otherwise, like, the growth team won't subsist. 40% retention too small. What is the industry standard? So we have a few benchmarks actually from competitors, and it's not too bad in our industry. I don't know what's the SaaS industry. I think it varies a lot because we have very different products and industries. For example, in our case, we're a tool that a lot of people use for surveys. And the survey is a one-off use case. You launch your survey, you get your data, and you're done. So it's natural that we have a big drop at the beginning. And it's not too small for us in our industry, for sure. What's the decision process after an inconclusive? Do you not do anything, or do you make a change so it wasn't a loser? That's a very good question. So, in some cases, because we like the design more and we have this gut feel that tells me this is a better user experience, we do stick with it. But most of the times, we put the pressure on the variant. So that is the challenger product change. So the rule is, if it's inconclusive, it doesn't do anything, so get rid of it. It only adds complexity. How does growth work in a B2B context? So we're B2B as well. Of course, there's a big spectrum of big enterprises and the lower end of the market of freelancers and SMBs, which is where we're at. Now, if you're talking about very enterprisey, solutions, then product-led growth doesn't fit as well. And then at that, product-led growth in those companies will be more about qualifying leads and helping marketing automate their processes to qualify leads for sales to convert as best as possible. In our case, it's about self-serving and getting more users in and monetize them as best as we can. What is your turnover? I think we've disclosed this. We closed the Series B 2 weeks ago, and we said it's more than 10 million in ARR. Why did you raise the Series B recently? Great question. So we have a lot of big product changes coming up. And the biggest one is that we're building a product for developers to also use to fuel our growth even more. So we'll open an office in the US to do a lot of biz dev and encourage platforms and third-party developers to build on top of us. And to do that, we need funding. Cool. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.